Hello and welcome to everyone accompanying us in the newest episode of Pier-to-Pier Podcast, where we bring those who reside within the virtual worlds to share the stories and the knowledge that they carry. Tonight at the Pier, I have somebody that I met at Ferality, somebody that I met at one of the meetups, one of the science meetups. Always curious about the topic of science and medicine, especially after a really good conversation that we had here with Jinxter, our in-house neuropsychologist, and I found this individual who is interested in many different fields, not just medicine, but biology, veterinary, psychology, and many, many other fields of expertise. And I just wanted to bring them here at the Pier to share a little bit about what they do and what they know. Tonight at the Pier, I have the honor of having SleepyBoldKlen. So, Bold, welcome to the Pier.
Hi. Glad to be here.
Let's kick things off the right way. I want you to introduce yourself to your audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, okay. Hi, I'm Klen. SleepyBoldKlen, as the name tag calls me. But I am a second-year biology student from Canada. I am currently studying biomedical sciences and am having a little bit of a understudy inside of psychology. I, as you've said, have an interest in veterinary. It's one of the few paths that I'm looking forward to getting into, but it's not sort of like the one I've locked myself into because there is a lot in the biology field, but veterinary, and specifically the type of veterinary I want or I am interested in, is what you would call a dying profession. So I'm kind of interested in getting into it simply because there's not a lot of people that do it, specifically being avian veterinary. Here in Canada, here in Ontario, and in my area, Toronto, we have only ever had 3 avian vets, and after COVID, we lost one, and now there's only 2, and those 2 aren't just for one city. That's pretty much for all of Ontario. Funny enough, it's very far and few between. You find veterinarians that actually work on small animals like lizards and birds, but those are kind of what I want to work on or learn to work with.
So, we already established that you're interested in many different fields, but I want to start at the beginning about your interest in biomedical science. What was the thing that drew you towards this?
Well, I would have to say the first thing that ever actually drew me into the biology field was a interesting encounter, and it's the reason why I set into the guideline of veterinary, is because one of my friends, they had this pet fox, and one night they got attacked by a dog, and the only thing at that time I really remember off of head was just this urge and want to be able to help their fox, but I didn't have the skills or requirements to do it. And sadly, at the time, it was too late and too far for them to get to any facility that could help them, so it was just kind of left to the fates in order to see if something would open in time that they could get help. And that sort of sense of like, man, I wish I could do something here, kind of started an interest in learning about animals, which spawned an interest about general biology, which kind of just started a bit of a snowball.
It's interesting how many people have firsthand experience where in the field of medicine where they actually want to help but they don't know how. It's an interesting motivator for many people. I've seen that pattern repeating over and over. Do you still remember very vividly that moment that you felt powerless? Is it something that is still in the back of your head whenever you look at yourself and what you've done so far? in your career as a student of biology?
It is definitely something that I now in present days look back on and just keep kind of thinking as a little motivator that if I was put in that situation again right now, could I do something about it? And every time, the more I study, the longer I go, the more I focus on it, the more I commit to my field, the more I get to that point of where it's like, maybe I could. That every moment forward, there's that kind of milestone where it's like, okay, I've learned something here. I think if I were to think back to that situation, maybe I could do something. Now I know how to tend to the wound longer, how to properly disinfect areas. I even know how to stitch wounds. So it is something I do think back to.
And this is knowledge that doesn't necessarily only apply to animals. This also applies to people.
Does apply to people. I would know. Can't see it, but I have a stitch right here that's my own doing. You know, one of the things about
wait, you cut yourself? You got cut? Wait. Now I need context. You have a wound? Wait. Explain.
So I got like a proper injury, got into a little bit of an accident and had a bit of a gash inside of my arm, and all the people around me when it was occurring were absolutely freaking out, and I'm just staring and I'm like, okay, that sucks. And well, everyone is freaking out, like, we need to get to a hospital, you need to go to the ER and whatnot. And here's the thing about Canada, our ERs take a little bit to get through, because we have free healthcare. There is a first come first serve basis, but there is also a severity basis. So like if you go in, you have to wait in a queue, but if someone comes in and they have a more serious injury, they kind of get pushed up the queue, which fair, honestly. And it was late. I was tired. I didn't want to go to the ER, so I was like, I'm fine. Let me get my sewing kit. So I went, grabbed a sewing kit, grabbed some isopropyl, and to the dismay of everyone with me, just started sewing myself up.
Did it hurt like hell? Because it feels like doing something like that to yourself is going to be really difficult and going to hurt like hell.
Well, that's funny. That's where adrenaline comes in, because it didn't feel like anything until after. During the process of it, sewing it up itself, no pain at all there, but that's thanks to adrenaline, because it's one hell of a drug. Because your brain can basically say, okay, shit's fucked. We need to... Well, am I allowed to swear?
You can swear. We don't mind.
It's bad. So we're gonna stop the pain chemical for now. You fix that. So got that sewed up, got that fixed up, and now I have it cleaned and tended to. So I would say that having some information in the biology field has, I guess you could call it helpful, but it's also made me a little bit more stubborn to what I actually go get help for.
Like you see something like you cut yourself, you have like an injury, you're like, God dang it, guess I'm gonna have to fix myself now. I mean,
where's the super glue?
Where's the super glue?
No, really. Super glue was actually designed originally as a medical apparatus. It's
oh
sterile.
dear Lord!
No, really, it's a type of medical suture that was used in the army, because sewing stuff would actually be in such a field would be dangerous because of infection. So you just kind of take some Craggle and then that's why if you've ever gotten super glue on your fingers, you notice how it like near instantly solidifies.
Oh yeah, that's the point of super glue. It's supposed to, stick really fast.
Right, but if you join two things, it's still slippery for a second. But if you get that stuff on your skin or your fingers, it like instantly kind of adheres, that's because it has something that actually works with certain oils that your skin produce. It's kind of neat.
Okay, interesting. I mean, it's the type of thing that of course, only a person who went to biology school would know. I mean, really interesting piece of information. Don't get me wrong. It's just like the one like weird conversation starts like, "Do you work in medicine? How did you know?" Super glue joke.
Do not use super glue to try to reattach limbs. It won't work.
Noted. Now, what areas of biology fascinate you the most? Like
DNA and cell
specific
biology.
areas of it. What's that?
DNA and cell biology specifically, but also autonomy mainly, or like basically the physical makeup, like your the internal structure, your bones, your nerves, your vesicles, fancy words.
The thing that makes you you.
Kind of, yeah. All the different, like, what the organs do and where they are and how you, I guess, play with them is a weird way to put it. How to tend to them, how to monitor, know what they do, know where they are, kind of know their makeups and know what could happen to them, what can't happen to them, certain cancers, how they affect certain skills that are used, methods of biopsy, blah, 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 things like that, structures, and that kind of gets into that cell biology situation, which kind of snowballs down into biochemistry, which is a nightmare.
What are common misconceptions that people usually tend to have about those fields?
Misconceptions about the biology field. I think that there is definitely a huge misconception that we know what we're doing.
You don't?
Well, that's the fun thing with biology, because it's always yes but no. Why does that fix it? Yes. Should it be like that?
It just does. Like, we don't ask questions about why. It just did. So it's like, you're welcome. Did I get that right?
It's kind of like the question of, okay, why when you like drop an intestine back into someone does it know how to reorganize itself? Oh.
So what you're saying is that there's still a lot of mysteries in biology and in medicine as a whole. There's still things that we can't explain, or we're trying to explain.
That's the fun part. That's the fun part right there, because there's a lot of stuff. I probably won't say that medicine doesn't have an answer to it. It's just more of a sense that with my current study, I don't have an answer to it. But it's very interesting because the biology field, it does span a lot more than people would think, like just ecosystems and medical stuff. I've actually seen how the biology field has been able to like span into stuff like musical academics or culinary arts or all these different things, because you look at the structure and you think, oh, science. And yeah, a lot of people that get into it do get into the sciences, but it's interesting how the sciences can be a framework for just everything else, I guess is a way to put it. So if I were to say there's a misconception, it would definitely be that biology is just kind of that poking at cells, looking at DNA, going into the small details of stuff. Like, of course you are, but it has a lot more application, I guess is a way to put it, that people don't really think about. Like, what food someone can eat, or how there's specific, like, dietary restrictions. That in itself, though it's something in the field of culinary, is at a core nature biology. understanding pairings of sauces and whatnot. That's a core nature and just core structure of chemistry. It's a lot of the different fields overlap with things that you wouldn't think they would.
I mean, interesting you mentioned that. We actually had somebody here from the culinary world at the pier not too long ago, and they said something very similar to what you're saying. I mean, everything is a science if you think about it, especially things that involve mixing and matching different things. Even we can't explain why certain reactions happen, they happen. And, it comes out good, as long as it ain't as long as it ain't blowing up the world, hey, we're good over here. We're golden. Now, I wanna I wanna deviate a little bit, and I wanna switch gears to another one of your interests. I want to talk now about psychology. What sparked your interest in psychology?
That's actually a little bit more clear cut. So I have grown up with specific psychological conditions that have kind of driven like a curiosity of like why the brain works certain ways or does certain things or has specific responses, be it actual like mechanisms, defense mechanisms, ways we think, or the actual like chemical what's it's going on inside of there, and basically the rhyme to reason, I guess, is a way to put it. I very early in life was diagnosed with ADHD, and through it I have a buffet of mental things going on, and it kind of spawned a curiosity about them, from less of a something I just have to deal with to a why is that a thing? Why is this? Why does drinking coffee instead of giving me energy send me to nap time town? It's actually kind of neat. It's because what do you call it? Something back here, amygdala maybe. Different sizes and whatnot. It's actually kind of funny because the brain processes the chemical in a way it's not supposed to. It kind of causes a flip and has it do the opposite response. That's why I take magnesium and my brain says it's go time. But having my own mental disabilities is what hands down stemmed a interest in generic psychology, and that getting the foot into that door just kind of in its own sense caused a broader interest, as now with all my other interests, not only do I see a physical standpoint how things physically affect, but I can also start getting an understanding of how things cognitively affect, and both together are pretty useful, especially for someone who wants to get into a medical field, but is also not really useful for someone who accidentally performs auto surgery on themselves, because now I know how to trick my brain into doing things it shouldn't want to do. It's interesting. The more you study certain things, the more understanding you have with stuff, the more control you gain. You do gain a control over it. More understanding I have of my brain, the more of a grasp I kind of have on understanding the why it does specific things. And it's kind of spawned this situation where now, instead of getting certain fears when I have a mental reaction to something or physical reaction to something, my brain doesn't go into a panic mode. It kind of goes into an analytical mode, and it's like, why is that happening? What's doing that? What's going on there? And I end up being my own little science project, which to some is kind of freaky. Fair.
I mean, since you did mention that your interest was mostly sparked by the condition that you had at birth. I mean, let's be completely. This is something that it's either developed or something that you have since the beginning. People find it in different stages of their life. But you studied psychology mostly to understand yourself, to learn about yourself as a person. Why do you behave in these ways, like just to make an understanding, which is really interesting. Usually it's the other way around, like, hey, I want another person to try to understand what is wrong with me, but not a lot of people like sit down and actually like, okay, this is because this is something that could not only benefit you, it could benefit others, because you're talking from your own experience. You're using this thing that you learned, this thing that you have, and you learned about yourself, and could potentially even help others to better understand themselves. Because who better to be there than somebody who might be undergoing a similar condition or similar situation to others. But at the same time, having conditions like that can pose difficulties, especially in a field like medicine or science, where you need utmost control of your body and your head. So I wanna ask you, as a person with ADHD and several other conditions, what has been the most challenging thing in your field, having to deal with your condition?
This is going to sound either pretentious or weird, but I actually find my field a little easier due to my condition. Mainly because I'm able to cognitively track a lot more stuff than other people can because of how my brain chemistry is effective. Now, of course, like if I get into an academic situation, I have issue with memory recall. That is one of the highest or most common problems is long-term memory and the ability to pull things forward from previous memory. It's called memory recall. And then taking that and having an application to actual like written test work, that's truly I would say the most difficult portion. I'm gonna hurt you. Would have to say that is the most difficult thing I face, especially because when you have conditions and whatnot like this, certain accommodations they do, like giving you a certain space to work in. In some cases, it's helpful, but in other cases, you actually tend to structure things you're remembering based off of the space you're learning it in. So staying inside of a space after you've learned it actually gives your brain an easier time recollecting that information, because it kind of uses a little bit, I guess you call it a cheat. If you've ever like when you like enter a room for a reason but you completely forget it.
Yeah.
So that's something called the doorway phenomenon, or the doorway phenomenon. It's where our brains, they like to take the simplest route to a solution, and sometimes that's correlating a thought to a physical space. So as soon as you're outside of that physical space, your brain can no longer correlate it to it, so you actually completely lose it because of the way your brain's holding it. It's kind of neat. Our brain likes to simplify a lot of stuff, and because of that, it causes a lot of those testing scenario issues. But in situations of application, when I'm actually handling a situation, getting to the more physical portion of it, like if I'm doing my lab work or if I'm doing some actual medical application, like I'm tending to a wound or something, or tending to a hurt animal, my condition allows me to focus on a lot more stuff, and due to one of my symptoms, I don't get the same levels of anxieties people might with certain situations. Where most people might panic in certain cases or start getting afraid and just snowballing into those fears. I don't really get that due to my ADHD. I have a symptom. It's not a what you would call its own condition. It's a subsymptom. It's called alexithymia. My brain doesn't process. I guess the easiest way to put it is my brain doesn't process emotion the same way other people do, or the average way people do. So it's a lot more of a people call me a Vulcan, I guess. If you've ever watched Star Trek, people referred it to that, but it's a lot weirder. My brain doesn't respond properly to certain emotional stimuli and doesn't activate proper responses when it's supposed to. So that helps in certain situations where my brain and body should be feeling a fear response, but the brain gets that signal and it's like, doesn't compute. So when it comes to a practical application, it actually makes it easier.
And you think that studying psychology has helped you better? I mean, yes, of course, it has helped you understand better. What am I asking here? But what I wanted to ask is, psychology has allowed you to understand yourself much better and everything regarding you, to the point that it even feels like you're not studying psychology to help others, but to help more yourself, to learn more about yourself. I mean, you're pretty much establishing that point further on the more you talk about it. But for example, living with a condition like that, and like not being able to read fear. I mean, this question might be a little bit ironic, but living without being able to feel fear, does it feel scary at points?
In a practical sense, totally. It's an absolutely terrifying thought to think about. A lot of the feelings I do feel have to come from a more analytical space. Kind of think of it as like situation, prompt, expected emotion, send, instead of just experience emotion. It's kind of like a line of process. My brain figures out what my brain actually has to figure out. Oh, I should be feeling this in this situation. But if along the way my brain's like, well, we don't need that, it kind of kicks it off the rail. And that can definitely cause some very frightening situations because it allows stuff like intrusive thoughts to be a lot more dangerous because I don't have that normal sense in the back of my mind saying, don't do that. I just have something in the front of my mind kind of pestering that curiosity, or that little brain worm is like, hey, do that. Hey, you could make that jump. Go for it. And of course, you work it through. It's like, that's a bad idea. But I don't have that same kind of barrier. Our brain has a natural ability to stop ourselves from doing dumb stuff. And because my head is the way it is, I don't have that. So I have to, instead of where some people might do it on a more passive sense, like your brain might get, like for you, your brain might give you an intrusive thought where it's like, hey, put your hand on the element of the stove, and you might go to do it, but you'll physically stop, and your brain will like just saying, what are you doing? I don't have that. I have to actively tell myself, don't do that.
It requires more brain power,
thinking.
more thought behind it, more intention behind it, because otherwise you might feel like you might do something unintentionally.
Exactly.
But you gotta give it more thought. You gotta think more about things before doing them.
It's extremely terrifying and it's extremely dangerous. especially because it's very dependent on keeping my own focus, I guess is a way to put it. Because if I break focus, I might end up doing something dumb. Exhibit dumb.
Exhibit dumb. Now, I want you to think this through with this next question, because now I want to ask you a question that relates to both of these fields. Biology, which is the study of organisms and organic material people, and psychology, which is all about the mind. How connected do you think the mind and the body really are?
That depends what you mean by that. When it comes to a physical standpoint, extremely. The brain is heavily responsible for a lot of our body's interworking processes and just general senses and processings. Some people think of stuff on a more spiritual situation, and there's nothing we can really do yet to prove spirituality. So honestly, whatever someone's personal opinion about spirit connection to the mind and body, that's totally up to them, and people, I believe, are allowed to have whatever thought they want, because that's honestly how things work with science. You have a thought, you try to prove it, you either don't or you do. Nothing's exactly wrong until it's proven as such. That's why we have our hypotheses. The mind and the body are, well, quite easily, in a physical sense, heavily linked, because it allows us to, well, the chemical signals allow us to know what we're doing and whatnot, allow us to have our experiences. It's all just electricity and goo up there. And it tells our body what to do, it tells our heart to beat, tells our lungs to breathe, it tells all those little processes that you yourself don't really focus on, and it is what at the end of the day is driving all of our different experiences. But it's also interesting when it gets into stuff that doesn't actually actively affect the brain, like placebos. Your mind has this advanced ability to influence your body, even if something physically isn't. It's why sometimes people can placebo themselves into certain sicknesses, or can develop certain things just from the thought of it. It's really impressive how strong the ability of belief actually is in affecting you. It's actually why you might see certain painkillers. They might be more expensive, they might have different branding, and it's really interesting because even if those painkillers are the exact same dosage, the exact same acetaminophen, whatever it is, if it's slightly more expensive and it has like a fancy name or says it's for something specific, it's really interesting how the brain is like, yep, that does that. There's something inherent with us that causes a higher effect. It's kind of neat. Yes, our brain does stuff and helps us adapt stuff inside of our physical body, but it's also really interesting how it can even affect stuff simply by being tricked into it. That's what makes the placebo effect so gnarly, in all honesty.
It's actually an interesting explanation, especially the part about placebo. I mean, I've seen it myself. I've seen other people experience such a thing, especially taking, like you say, dud pills, like medicine that doesn't do anything, but it tricks the mind into actually believing that it's actually doing anything, and the body gets better. It's an interesting phenomenon, which is why I wanted to ask such a question. I wanted you to elaborate a little bit about that, because it's something that not a lot of people really believe on it. People think that placebo ain't a thing, but it is a
real.
thing.
It's a real thing. It is documented. There's studies on it. There are papers done on it. In fact, the placebo effect is a very heavily documented thing, and is actually a variable that has to be adjusted for inside of psychology studies. If we're, say, doing a psychological study on a certain medicine's effect on someone, not only do we have to have a control group where they're not taking anything, we also have to have a sort of control group where what they are taking is, as you said, just a sugar pill. And it's really interesting when there's situations like, say, it's there was this one study where a group was given the actual medication for something, but they were told it was the placebo. And then there was a group that was told it was the actual medication, but they were actually given the placebo. And that thought that it is not actually the medication or it is the medication did actually cause a variable. It's really neat because that shows that our mind does actually have a play in how much something does actually affect us.
There's still something at play there, something that we truly do not understand, something that requires more investigation and more thorough research. But hey, maybe we'll one day get to explain it much, much further as medicine, technology, medicine, and science further advances throughout the years. Now, I want to switch topics again. I mean, we're running a bit tight on time, but I think we can do it with the time that we have remaining. You already talked what inspired you to decide parkour. you talked a bit about biology and even animal biology, which is, again, why you got interest in veterinary work. You like taking care of animals. But now this might be a bit of a shocker for people here. But now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about that other thing that you really enjoy doing, which is totally an opposite. Taxidermy. What got you in taxidermy?
Now, it's funny. It's not as much as an opposite as you might think, because it does actually circle back into physiology. So the reason I first got into taxidermy is because it was I do a lot of cooking. I would do a lot of cooking, and I have a firm belief of not wasting stuff. And at one point, what started the trend into taxidermy was I cooked a rabbit one night, and after the meal, everything was preserved enough, and I was like, that's kind of cool. And I took the pieces and I rebuilt it. And starting from there, it kind of started this little trend where it may look creepy to some, but I think of it as a little bit of a sign of respect, because what else would have happened to that? It was something that I ate, something that fed me, fed my family, and what next would have happened would have been just sending it off to a trash heap. But instead of that, I took it, reassembled it, and now it's a physical diagram that has these different notes talking about stuff and whatnot. And that started a bit of a snowball into my connection into aviatrics, or aviation, birds. I have a lot of pet birds. And a sad thing about living inside the city, you don't have a lot of places to bury such types of animal. So when they get that small, your only real option is, as would with food, to the trash heap. I felt that was a bit disrespectful, so that caused me to taxidermy my first bird. I put him inside of a jar with some water, and I just kind of let time do its thing, and now I have reassembled his skeleton, and it has given me a little bit more of an insight into the structure and whatnot of certain things, and how my pets themselves are physically aligned, so I actually understand if they're getting themselves hurt or whatnot they can actually handle. It's kind of interesting. And in the same sense, it getting this comfort into it getting that comfort of working with the remains has gotten it to a point where one of my previous pets passed away, and I used the opportunity to do a dissection. And through that, I figured out what happened to him. And through figuring out what happened to him, I was able to adjust stuff in their space so that the next bird wouldn't die the same way. He ate a mesh screen, so we had to. I found that inside of his stomach, and it ruptured something, and I had to. Well, I took that and changed that in their space, and now there's no mesh in their area. So it's equal parts a way of respect and a way to help the future, I guess, generations of any animals I'm taking care of, because there is an insight you can find in that which comes before. And the more and more I work with the different figures and the interesting differences I can see between, like, I have 3 birds, exact same species, all budgies, but it's neat to see how each of one of them are actually built a little bit differently. You can see different bone lengths, all that different stuff, and I can actually see in some of them, like in their later life, even though they had a relatively chill life and died of old age, I saw that one of them actually had a fracture in one of their bones, and that caused a bit of an investigation of, well, how did that end up happening? And it's basically allowed me to slowly ensure a safer space for any birds I'm keeping. I do have a little bit of I've started a little bit of a at-home bird sanctuary, but that's more of I keep finding baby birds out on the street that are hurt or can't fend for themselves, and I keep feeding them and raising them up, and then they just won't leave.
Mama bird.
Yeah.
So would you say that studying anatomy and biology influence your appreciation of taxidermy in the long run?
It has, I would say. And I would also say vice versa, that taxidermy has given me more of an insight into biology, having that physical hands-on form of it and seeing interworkings not just in a textbook, but now in a physical standpoint. It kind of recontextualizes certain things, because you're told all this stuff, what does what affects what, but then you're actually working with it, you're going in and understanding it, and you can actually now see how such a simple problem at point A caused a chain of effects that got the creature to point B. It's why I have an appreciation for it. It's why I practice taxidermy, and it's definitely really creepy to anyone who, on the outside, are looking in and see a bunch of animal skeletons littered around my room. But they, with them, carry a story, carry a history, and carry a knowledge that allows me to progress and help other things.
Is that like one of the many misconceptions and misunderstandings that people have with taxidermy? Or are there others aside from that, from the fact that it just like looks creepy?
I think the main thing is that it looks creepy, but there is an extreme practical sense. It's like seeing a skeleton diagram inside of your school science room, seeing something like that, or seeing an anatomy structure. It's like, oh, that's nothing, but then suddenly bird skeleton, you're like, oh. I think it's because there is definitely a connection to what our brain views as kind of like a cute thing or as a pet, and then seeing it in such a way is very stressful for the heart. A lot of people, one of the most common things you'll actually hear in the animal field is if you love animals, don't become a vet. If you care about animals, do. There's a little bit
That's a
of,
powerful
because there's a
quote.
little distinction there.
That's a powerful quote right there. We are running a bit short on time. I mean, there's still things that I want to ask you before we end our session. So I want to switch gears, and now I want to know about your VR journey. I want to know what got you in here. I mean, there are many factors that got you in that chair, and I want to know the first step towards that. I want to know what was the thing that got you in VR.
Oh gosh. Well, I started VR as a lot of people might have. It was, well, I got into it right before COVID started. It was back in 2018, I think, was my first time ever getting into VR chat, and I was just a headset with an Xbox controller. And because of where I live in a city where it's very hard to get together and do things with people, just because of generic life, was a it was a sort of a format of connection that I was in need of. It allowed me to talk to many people, allowed me to have a lot more social experiences than I could have had on a regular, especially in a lot more of a safer kind of climate, because I have a few social phobias that I have to deal with, and VR has actually been a very helpful medium for that. It allows me to do a lot more socializing in a lot more of a controlled manner, and that's why I started. Then COVID hit, and it swapped from a controlled way to socialize to a predominant way to socialize, and then over time I started making more friends, making more connections, and that led me down a road to get into the place I am today, to being a bit more of a socialite, being able to get out and do some more stuff. I do have to say that a lot of my social skills, my ability to not be shy about certain things and go out and just talk to people, has been fostered here in VR chat, and I'm very thankful for that, you know?
Your story is the story of hundreds, if not thousands, of people who have gotten into VR, and VR has been a really positive tool to allow them to reintegrate themselves into the world. I don't like using the word reintegrate because, I mean, we are already social creatures. We already like to interact with others, but I feel like it has been crucial into breaking people out of their own shells, their own barriers that they set up, and just allow them to, see the world with a better eye. I mean, there's still some people that still much rather be in VR, but at the same time, I feel like it has some good uses. I mean, the other person that we had here from the field of medicine, the neuropsychologist resident Jinxter, said so. VR should be a complement, not a substitute, to a real social interaction. Same with social media, same with any sort of interaction. Like, it's okay to socializing here, but you also got to go out there in the world, meet some people, touch some grass. That goes to everybody. Go touch some grass. But overall, try to be better people. And that's just like why I love about technology like this. Allows to connect with people from many different other backgrounds and just help expand our own tool sets for the world. Now, I want to know, talk a little bit about why are you a axolotl, or why do you consider yourself a kobold? I want to know that story.
Okay, so I was not always a furry. I got in.
Oh, pray tell! Give us the story.
I got into this by accident. So at first, it just kind of started as a situation where I was hanging out in groups. When I first started VR chat, I actually was in the wave of people who used the Khan avatar. And then from there, I started hanging out with certain groups, and I started hanging out with furry groups because, gotta admit, there's some of the more colorful people that you can meet. They're got a lot of very interesting experiences, got very fun stories. So in order to fit in, I picked up a cat avatar, and that led me onto the path of becoming Sleepy. So at the time, I was just called Hijack, and then at that time, picking up that avatar, I became Sleepy Cat Hijack, and then after that, over an amount of time, I was never really connected to that creature. It was just kind of something I picked up, and I play a lot of D&D, so I was thinking, okay, what's my favorite D&D creature? And it was kobolds, and I was like, okay, we'll take that, and we'll just substitute. So then I became Sleepy Kobold, and that is why I'm where I am today. The axolotl is my favorite animal, so that's why I'm somewhat styled off of one. I'm actually styled off of a creature which is styled off of an axolotl from Monster Hunter, which is one of my favorite games because it kind of takes a biological standpoint at a mythological subject. And I think that's really cool what they've done there. And from that genre, this model, this Sona is styled off of something called a Mizutsune, which in itself is based off of an axolotl and a fox. So that's pretty neat. And of course, I did originally love the Mizu because it was styled off of an axolotl, and axolotls are just radical. They are nuts. They are a strange piece of biological soup with a single brain cell bouncing around in their head that they have a single thought whenever it hits the corner.
Would you consider it ironic that you are a furry and you're also into veterinary and animal care? Am I weird for thinking that's a bit ironic?
Now here's the weird question. If it was a society where everyone was a furry creature, would we have doctors or would we have veterinarians?
And you know what? I'm gonna bring you back here to the podcast at a later date, and we shall talk about furry anatomy. I want to bring you back here, and we're gonna do a whole talk where we just talk about what would make sense in a furry society anatomy wise. And I hope that you'll take up the challenge for that.
I definitely will, because there's actually a very interesting note about veterinary, that there is one misconception. It's not specifically animal biology, it's alien biology. Veterinary is a study of biology outside of human physiology. So it spans outward from anything that isn't us. Which is
so what you're saying is, if aliens came down from the heavens, we would not call doctors to do the autopsies or open up the bodies. No, we would call veterinarians. Is that what you're implying?
You call a scientist, but what I'm saying is if you somehow get stuck on an alien planet and you have a boo-boo, don't go to their doctor, go to their vet.
Well, unfortunately, Sleepy, we have ran out of time, but not before I finish with just two final questions, because I wanna know from your perspective. First off, from your expertise, you spend a lot of time studying life, whether it be human minds, be it animal health, be it anatomy. What would you say is the biggest thing that has taught you about what it means to be alive?
Ooh, that's a tough one. The biggest thing to mean to be alive, I would have to say the collecting and teaching of knowledge, the learning and understanding of something and then teaching it to others to help them understand more. That's truly, to me, the thought of life that there's things to be understood, and then once they're understood, you help one another learn them and understand them together, because a lot of stuff you can't understand on your own. And even with the science fields, we can't do hypotheses in a vacuum. It takes a fact we find, or a truth, or like one of the laws of science doesn't just come from one person's thought. It comes from an accumulation of many people coming together to make something. So to me, I'd have to say that's what it means to be alive a bit, to take present knowledge, previous knowledge, and knowledge that's going to come in the future and work together to create something with it.
Mighty words, mighty words. Do you feel that other people from other fields of science or human psychology or veterinary or biology, or like, do you think they would share your same perspective?
I think they would. Because even though the sciences have different names, everything at the end of the day is that umbrella of science, and it's all a pursuit of just generic knowledge of the functions of specific things, the understanding the why, those questions that we beg to answer, and then together the different fields, even if we're separate fields, we come together to talk about things. You can't actually have any individual field without the other. Biology doesn't work on its own. Nothing works inside of a vacuum. You can't have biology without chemistry and physics. You can't really have physics without chemistry. You can't have chemistry without biology. They all rely on each other. So I'd have to say, yeah, there probably would be a similar feeling in the fields, even if under a blanket or under a black light they look completely different. It's kind of interesting how similar all the fields actually are. And it's really annoying when you're a bio student and you're forced to do physics. That sucks.
I did IB physics in school. I understand the suffering and the pain. Well, final question before we finish off the podcast. This is the same question that I ask every single person that comes here at the Pier, because this is a VR podcast at the end of the day. And my whole idea with this is to tell not only the stories of those who spend their time here in VR, but at the same time inspire others who are still hesitant to get into VR, to take the next step and get themselves a headset and experience social VR or fitness VR or just VR in general. If you could talk directly to that person who's still hesitant about getting VR, getting a headset, if you could talk directly to that person, what would you tell them?
Well, it depends why they want or have an interest in getting into VR. Like me, it wasn't a substitute, it was a supplement, as you said, to my socialization and my social life. I would definitely recommend, and have recommended to some of my friends who have advanced social anxieties, to give it a try, because it allows a controlled space. VR is a very helpful and useful medium, and it does have its place in the field of psychology that is actively being applied in certain exposure therapies. So I would recommend trying it, even if it's just trying it for a day, an hour, a few minutes. It allows you to open up a little bit more possibilities. It allows you to expand what you can talk to, who you can talk to, and who you can meet. Because VR and VR chat has been a astronomically useful medium in order to meet new people outside of your own space. You find views that you would have never thought you could find originally. You learn things you never even thought you could. You find questions that you never even think you could have ever asked, and you find insights that you could have never even thought on your own. So I'd say give it a try. There's no harm in it. And at the end of the day, if you aren't liking it, you can always just pick up your headset and break it out and break your tracking while at it.
Hey, you were very literal with your explanation. You even took off the headset just to prove the point. Anyway,
thank you again, SleepyBoldKlen, for coming here to the pier with us, and to our lovely audience. I want to thank you all for sticking and watching a new episode of Pier-to-Pier Podcast, where we bring those who reside within the virtual worlds to share the stories and to share the stories and the knowledge that they carry. May you all have a wonderful rest of your day.